Let's talk about something that's on pretty much everyone's mind, our relationship with social media. You know the feeling. You scroll, you post, you connect, but then sometimes it feels like you just can't stop. So is that an addiction?
I mean, you see quotes like this one from the US Surgeon General, and it really sums up the story we hear everywhere, right? The idea that our phones are the new cigarettes, that these apps are literally rewiring our brains. It's a really powerful and, let's be honest, kind of scary idea.
And naturally, it leads to this question, the one you've probably asked yourself after getting that weekly screen time report and thinking, oof, do I have a problem here? Am I actually addicted?
But hang on, here's a thought. What if framing it that way, as an addiction, is not only wrong for most of us, but it's actually making it harder for us to change? What if we've been using the wrong word this whole time?
So first up, the addiction story. Let's dig into where this whole idea came from and why this one word became so incredibly powerful in the first place.
So check this out. Just a decade ago, social media addiction was barely even a blip on the academic radar. But then, as you can see, the research just completely exploded. It peaked in 2021, and all that academic chatter started fueling the news cycle, cementing this idea deep in our culture.
And wow, this slide just lays it all out. Researchers looked at thousands of news articles and found that the term social media addiction shows up 10 times more often than social media habit. But look at the engagement. We're talking 40 times more likes, shares, and comments for the word addiction. It's clear that addiction is the story that grabs our attention.
But what happens when you actually hold that popular idea up against, clinical data? Well, a recent study did exactly that. And, well, the results were definitely not what you'd expect.
The setup was pretty simple, really. They took a big representative sample of Instagram users across the US and used the standard clinical tool, the Bergen Social Media Addiction Scale, to see how many people were actually at risk.
And here it is. This is the huge disconnect the study found. While almost 1 in 5 people, 18%, felt at least a little addicted to Instagram, only a tiny fraction of them, just 2%, actually met the clinical criteria to be considered at risk. That's a massive gap between how we feel and what's really going on.
So, here's the crucial point. If it isn't a clinical addiction for 98% of people, then what's driving that automatic, compulsive checking we all know so well? The answer might be a lot simpler. It's a habit.
Let's be super clear on the difference because this is key. A clinical addiction involves really severe symptoms, like withdrawal, feeling truly anxious or troubled if you can't use it, and life conflict, where it's actually hurting your job or your studies. A habit, on the other hand, is just an automatic action your brain learns to do when it gets a certain cue, like pulling out your phone the second you feel bored.
You can think of a habit as just an efficiency tool. Your brain loves shortcuts. So if you do something, like scrolling Instagram, in the same context, like waiting for the train, and you get a little reward, a funny video, a like on your photo, your brain just says, hey, let's automate this. It's not a moral failing, it's just your brain doing its job.
And the research completely supports this. The study found that these 3 specific symptoms, withdrawal, life conflict, and that feeling of impaired control, were uniquely tied to people who felt addicted. They were not, however, strongly linked to just having a strong social media habit. That's the real dividing line.
Okay, so for most of us, it's a habit, not an addiction. But you might be wondering, so what? Does the word we use really matter? Well, the researchers wanted to find out, and it turns out the answer is a big, fat yes.
So what they did was run a little experiment. They had one group of people reflect on their Instagram use, but they framed it using that addiction language, kind of like you'd see in a public health warning. Then they measured how that affected how people felt.
And the results were just striking. Simply thinking about their behavior as an addiction for a few minutes made people feel less in control of it. It made them blame themselves more for it. The very label that's supposed to help us understand a problem seems to make us feel more powerless. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And that brings us to the most empowering part of all of this. If we reframe our social media overuse as a habit, which for the vast majority of us it is, then we can stop feeling helpless and start using actual proven strategies to change it.
And this is the really good news. You see, while addictions often need serious clinical treatment, changing a habit isn't about some epic white-knuckle battle of willpower. It's about being strategic. It's about redesigning your environment.
You can start with simple, super effective strategies. First, disrupt the cues that trigger the habit.
Move those apps off your home screen into a folder where you don't see them. Second, add a little friction. Make it just a bit harder to do the automatic behavior. Using grayscale mode on your phone is a great one. It makes the apps way less shiny and appealing. And third, replace the routine. When you feel that urge, have a substitute ready to go, like a book you want to read or a language app.
So instead of asking, am I addicted, maybe the much more powerful question is this. Understanding that your social media use is most likely a habit you have the power to reshape, what's the first small, strategic step you're going to take?